What was one of the ways that they used to take folks out of East Boston? Who said that? Raising taxes. Tell me your name. Edwin. Raising taxes. How does that help gentrification?
Because people that live there tend to be low income, can't afford to continue to pay taxes, so they have to move.
That's a broad picture. It's a little bit more nuanced. So what happens is when your homes are worth over $100,000 and you fall within $10,000 in debt, that means all a person has to do is pay your taxes and they own your home. So you take a whole neighborhood where they have raised the value of homes from $60,000 to $120,000. Now you cross that $100,000 threshold and you're more than $10,000 in debt, right? So we as black people, brown people, we don't pay our taxes every month, right? We pay our taxes at the end of the year. Well, last year we paid $6,000. This year we paid $12,000. How many in this room parents can afford $12,000 in taxes? Exactly. So what happens is these big developers come in with $500,000 and they're able to buy up a whole neighborhood, right? So that's the way taxes hurt us. But the gentrification, to answer your question, starts at the land assessment process. Where last year it was worth $60,000 and this year it's worth $100,000, right? Because all we see is the come up, right? All we see is that $40,000 come up. But we can never sell our homes to realize that profit. We don't have that option because we don't own any real estate companies. So how do we stop it? How do we stop gentrification? Come on now. Come on, work with me. How do we stop it? What's the first thing I had y'all say? I said people, power, right? There's this thing called communal land trust, which allows folks to collectively own the land. We buy the land collectively, we sell it to a nonprofit, and that takes the land off the private market. It is the market that is driving the value of the land. And the market is determining whether or not the taxes go up. You know Austin pays the highest taxes in the state, right? Y'all know we pay for school districts outside of Austin, right? Y'all know that, right? That your taxes in Austin are paying for school districts in South Texas. But they're pushing us out so we can pay for somebody else's school district. See, that's gentrification and that's colonization. Colonization is when an outside group comes in and occupies the land that is owned by an indigenous people. Black folks were indigenous to the east side. We were at 15%. We are now at less than 6%. All right? Any more questions? We'll talk about the campaign too. Let's get there. I want to ask you about this, sir.
So with that, when the black community is being bought out, right, because it's a community buyout, it's happening kind of all at once, and these people are being displaced, how does that affect the political landscape of that area, right? Because before you had a community that could all vote one way or the other. But now when that community is displaced and replaced with new citizens who think in a whole different ways, how does that affect the political landscape? And then also in turn, how does that come back and affect the community and those members that were also displaced?
So that's a two-part question. Let's unpack that. The first part was, how does that change the political landscape when somebody else comes in, right? That's not from that area. In other words, in East Austin, right? How does it look politically when there's a lot of rich white people now living where poor people live? How does that affect the politics? How do you think it affects the politics?
It's not showing, like what, I don't know, the proper, I got the word for it, but it's not showing what the true community is. You're only getting what the white people or what the Republicans, whatever that group is, that's what you're getting their opinion. But you're not getting the full basis of what Austin is.
But what's driving that?
Gentrification.
But what's driving gentrification? What's driving it? Money. 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 Money is power. Don't ever get that twisted. When we organize people and we organize power, right? And we organize money. That's how you organize power, is through money. So to answer your question, When you got a lot of new people that have been invited to come into Austin, and people have been displaced to make room for these people, you are bringing in a new voting mentality. But you're also bringing in a lot of white guilt, right? So they don't want to transform the landscape completely because they know that they're transplants. However, they are willing to flex their muscle. And the way they flex their muscle is by investing in traditional politicians that do what they want them to do. Y'all know I'm not the traditional politician, right? Y'all know that. So y'all know that they're not supporting folks like me.
This was just a drill. Teachers, we will be reviewing this, the data that we've come up with this afternoon in the library immediately after school. You may resume your normal classroom activities at this time.
So how that looks in the future is we have to organize. That's why I'm talking to y'all. And that's why I'm going to directly impact people, asking for $5 and $10, right? It's not so much the money, it's to activate you into the process. How many of y'all have ever thought about voting? It wasn't important to you though, right? Until something happened, right? Something happened, you're like, man, I gotta go. When Trump got in office, I was like, I gotta go vote, right? And so did half of America. When Obama came in office, for no other reason, man, I'm black, I gotta go vote, right? Well, that's what this campaign is about. This campaign is about putting you in office. This campaign is about putting somebody that you know that's been through something that someone in your family has been through, somebody that cares about immigration, that actually cares about gender issues, that actually cares about folks losing their homes, but is also done time in prison. You feel me? Like, I've stood in commissary line. I've had to wait for my mama to put something on the books. I've been there. I've gotten off parole. I've been denied thousands of opportunities for no other reason than I did time. Not because I wasn't good enough, not because I didn't have the experience, not because I didn't have the aptitude, but because I had a stain in my background, a permanent scarlet letter that forever says that I'm not eligible. Right? So what does that say? I ask y'all again, do we think prisons are necessary? What has prisons done to help our community? What has prisons done to stop crime?
But like the third law of Newton, for every action, there's a reaction or equal. So what if you take out that?
Hold on. For every action, there is
An opposite
or equal reaction, right? Work with that, though. What is the opposite reaction to putting people in cages? Is it?
Well, training them how to
Okay.
associate with.
Let's try it again. When we were in slavery, people had that same argument. What do we do with them? What do we do with them once we free them? What are we going to do with them? Right? They had that same conversation that we're having now about prisons. They had about slavery. Right? What do we do with them? So you're asking me that question. How do we do it? Y'all gotta figure it out. You understand? You gotta come up with something other than a cage. I don't know what the answer is, but I know we're here and we gotta get over here. I know that our communities can no longer afford just shoving people in a cage and forgetting about it. And then when they come home, they can't go to work. They can't get a house. They can't run for office. What can we do besides shoving people in cages? What's the answer? I don't know. But we got to figure it out. Because if we don't figure it out, they're going to continue finding ways to put us in cages. Because we don't belong here. We're immigrants. We're black. We're poor. Right? So what are those cages for? Who are those cages for? And what are we doing to support the idea that we need those cages? Perpetuating the ideal of a cage. Y'all know what made me run for office? Anybody, just tell me, what would make me run for office? What would make me put my personal dirt out there in the world?
experience with prison. Your experience with
Experience
prison.
of.
My experience in prison, how would that propel me to run for office? Explain that to me. You've been quiet. Tell me. What's your name?
Alondria,
Alondra, good to meet you.
the
Tell me.
reason why I think you want to run for office is because you want to change and have people realize what's going on, and so that the younger people, the minorities, blacks or whatever, you want them to be like, hey, you need to speak up for yourself and let people know this is not going to continue because we can do something. That's what I feel like.
Can we get on the campaign? Right. So that's what that is, right? It's about folks who have never, I don't look like, a politician. I don't look like the ones that come and tell you what they're gonna do, right? So it's about creating a path for you. You should be running for office. You should be running for precinct chair. You should be running for land commissioner. And you should be running because there's nobody like you running. There's nobody willing to bear those slings and arrows of being called a convicted killer in a headline. You think that made me feel good? But I understood the necessity of it.
Mr. Wiley, hold on a second. What paper was that? What paper was it?
When we just did it.
No, there was a newspaper, y'all talked about it.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
I can't remember.
It was in your paper.
My paper?
Yeah. The Houston Chronicle.
Oh, yeah.
The Houston Chronicle, and it got picked up from a place, an online source called The Intercept. The Intercept is a national news source. So that headline didn't feel good, convicted killer, right? But I'd already put out 2 books. Now, if anyone can tell me what the law is that's trying to keep me from running, I've got a book for you.
Have you searched it up?
I have it.
Without looking.
Still have it. Well, is it like 11.2? Is it the one, sir, what's
How does it read? If you can tell me how it reads.
high crimes?
That's the federal law.
Oh, okay. Is it the one that you stated, and I can't say this thing, but the one that's around Austin, you stated it, and you said that you can't be held accountable for it because it's so big.
What is that law?
Oh my gosh. I know it, it's on the tip. I read it over and over and over.
Texas election code?
It's a certain portion of it. So who
someone
said it?
convicted-
Who said 141?
141.
He ain't even,
001.
baby, give him that.
What the heck?
So in that book, I discussed me going to prison. And it's section 141 of the election code, right? And so when I put out that book, that was me telling folks the information I wish I had coming home from prison. Right? When I came home from prison, I didn't know anyone who had ever been to prison that hadn't gone back to prison. And I needed to know how to stay out of prison. I needed to know how to get a job. I needed to know how to get housing. I needed to know how to have a relationship. I needed to know how to be a father. And that's not something that somebody who hadn't been to prison could tell me. And that's something I had to learn, so I wrote a book about it. And in that book, I talked about going to prison. So in 2015, I came out publicly with it, right? So it wasn't, when they called me a convicted killer, it was something I had already embraced. Because the truth is, I was convicted for killing somebody. But you gotta tell the whole truth if you're gonna tell the truth, right? And the truth is that I was involved in drugs, and I was involved in selling drugs, and I got robbed. That does not exonerate me from my actions. That just means that there was a condition that led to my actions. But what's most importantly is what is the conditions that lead people to selling drugs? It's poverty, lack of access, right? Again, that doesn't excuse the actions, but it helps you frame the conditions on why we have these issues. So do we lock up the drug dealer? Or do we lock up the government that creates the environment that creates poverty? You understand? It's just reframing how we think about it. And it's not that we don't blame anyone. We hold ourselves accountable. But we also hold the systems accountable that have historically put their foot on our necks and kept us oppressed. You know, now we can't even learn how to read by phonics anymore. You read by sight now, right? And if leaders are always readers and they cut out your ability to read, what does that make you? It's intentional, right? So when it comes down to my campaign, they said I couldn't run. Why? Why did they say I couldn't run?
You didn't have a partner.
Because I didn't have a partner. Now who says I need a partner? Talk to me. What's your name? Darren. Say it with your chest. So are they saying I need a partner?
Why?
And is that in the law?
It was saying like you're going to write back, but to be a candidate you need like a separate pardon from a judge or something.
And that's what the city clerk said, right?
But it was almost unknown, which they also said. Like it's never happened.
It's never happened before, but you're gonna tell me what I need.
No one is doing what you're doing.
I was
so
thinking about
therefore-
that.
Oh, yeah.
So therefore they have no answer.
They have no answer. Now you see why y'all have to run? So you can push the limits. It was designed for somebody never to test it, right? It was designed. It was designed for me to say, oh, I can't run. What does resulting disabilities mean? That's in the language. What does that mean? Resulting disabilities. And don't feel bad if you don't know, because the Secretary of State don't know either. Right? So that's the problem. What is a resulting disability? What? I can't vote? Well, I can vote, but I can't own a gun. I can own a gun after 5 years. I can't be on a jury. I can serve on a federal jury. What disabilities are there? Oh, you mean I'm socially unacceptable? Oh, you mean I'm challenging your bias and I'm challenging your prejudices? Is that what you mean? Are you saying that I'm saying that everyone that has a background is eligible to set policy? Is that the disability that you're talking about? You understand what I mean? What is the legal disability? Now, why do you think I should have to have a partner? Why do you think I should have to have some kind of judicial police? Who said that? That was an opinion, right? That was not a judicial opinion. That was an opinion of an employee of a state agency, right? So what do? What do we do as people who have historically not had power? What do we do? Tell me. Demand it. How do you demand it? The key to organizing is taking an issue that affects the most people. Right? That's the key to organizing. So the issue isn't us necessarily being able to run. It's the issue of you having this ambiguous law that reads in a way that makes people wonder what that means. See, that affects everyone, right? So what we say is we don't need a clemency. We don't need a pardon. The law doesn't say that, right? The law doesn't say that. What do we need to be able to run?
Have to be able to vote.
What else? That's it. My sentence is over. Right? There's no other reason to stop folks from not having access to policy. Because if we decide that we need a clemency, if we decide that we need a pardon, if we decide that we need all these extra hoops, what happens to the next person that hasn't done the policy work, that hasn't helped pass ordinances, that's just an average everyday Joe? What kind of hoops do they have to jump through? right? You shouldn't have to. We set the bar as low as possible, and we take the ugliest case, right? Somebody that's killed somebody. Because it would be easy if I was just a drug dealer, or if I had just robbed somebody, or if I was a white-collar criminal. It would be easy, right? Oh, yeah. But we take somebody ugly, and we say if he's able to, then everybody else after him, it'll be easy, right? So, my last point is this. How many people in this room is registered? Who's 18? Who's about to graduate soon? Y'all about to go out there into a world. Do you have a job lined up? No? You're gonna probably work hourly, right? Somewhere? Do y'all know what just got passed in Austin last week?
About the money, the minimum wage.
It's about paid sick days
Oh.
for hourly employees. Why is that important? Okay. I did 12 years on parole. I didn't have health insurance. Whenever I got sick, I went where? To the emergency room. Because I didn't have insurance, I couldn't pay the bill. Who paid the bill? The taxpayers. Right? So when you're sick and your mom has to stay home, she misses a day at work, right? She don't get paid. If you stay home 2 days, she misses 2 days at work, right? And when she misses money, she can't pay the rent, right? She can't pay her bills, right? So we just passed an ordinance that says she gets those days paid off. Now do you understand politics? Now do you understand how it touches your life? Tangibly? And guess who helped pass that? People like y'all who are having to go to work sick. Now, minimum wage, 15 an hour is what we have been trying to fight for. Right now, the minimum wage is around $7.50, I think, right? So, but we know the cost of living has doubled since the 70s, the last time we've had a pay increase. The cost of living has doubled, but we're still paying folks 15 an hour. Half my check goes to child support, and the other half goes to taxes. So if I'm making 15 an hour, I'm really making $7.50 an hour, right? If I'm making $7.50 an hour, that means I'm really making, right? So $15 an hour is something needed. I've made that part of my campaign. We need help. We need people power. We need people screaming at the council. We need people screaming at these employers that, you know, $7.50 an hour just doesn't work. We need a living wage. All right? Go ahead.
So what do you think about, you know, the people who are in power? We force them to pay their employees more, but then they have to fire all these people. So what do you think the people that don't have jobs? As a
How do they
result,
pay more?
They have to pay their employees more.
So, Trump just passed a big $1 trillion tax bill, right? And he said he passed it for corporate, he cut their taxes, right? And he cut their taxes so they can do what? So I don't get you.
I'm saying,
You feel me?
like in Walmart, like in the states where they've increased it, you know, and they're firing cashiers and replacing them with computers.
But is that a choice by the company? Does that have to do with 15 an hour, or does that have to do with the greed of the corporation?
It's the greed of the corporation, but it's the people who are affected by it.
It's the people who are so.
What
Well,
about
go
the
ahead.
people?
So, do we stay at $7.50 an hour?
No, I think we should go up, but I'm just saying, you know, like he said, there's gonna be a reaction from
And
the
the reaction is that we hold corporations responsible. We hold them accountable. If those corporations are reaping billions off of paying people pennies, shouldn't they be held accountable?
They should.
At some point, in the way we hold it now, also, what happens at Walmart is they don't allow unions. And why would they stop unions?
So they can't move up for this.
Because there's power in. Those corporations don't want unions. Because those unions demand that you split the profit. So it's not there's a lack of, we've been taught that there's a lack. There is not a lack of money. There's a lack of spreading that money. 42 people in the world own the majority of the wealth. 42 people own 80% of the wealth in the world. 42. You understand? They're not going broke, but they're telling you they're going to go broke if they pay people more. Because if they pay you more, that means they don't get to go spend those vacations. They don't get to give their kids $1 million in a trust fund. Not because they're going to go broke. And the reason why they're firing cashiers is to public opinion. They're going to fire me. But Trump just passed the corporation tax break. Right? So there's no excuse to not pay $15 an hour, even for small businesses, right? You can afford it. You can't afford to not to hire people who can give their families the best quality of life possible, is my opinion. I may be wrong. That's why the businesses don't want me in there. But I believe as a small business owner, because you know when I was on parole, that they wouldn't hire me, right? Y'all know that. Y'all know that McDonald's wouldn't hire me. Whataburger wouldn't hire me. It's being real. So I started my own businesses. I'm music video director, sound engineer, audio engineer, Final Cut Pro, Photoshop, Adobe InDesign. I did all of that just to stay out of prison. They didn't offer me any jobs. You understand what I'm saying? So I say that to say the only way for us to truly give people a better quality of life is to give them a wage that allows them to take care of their families. You know, I make not enough. I pay too much of child support and taxes, but I'm glad to be able to pay that.
Mr. Conway, I have a question. With everything you just said, will one of your focal points be the restorative justice?
Absolutely.
So when people come out of prison, they can find those jobs? Because we hear too many times one or the other. They either start businesses or they go back into the light.
So we have to be intentional about creating ways. And so one of the programs I've designed is called a Arrears Placement Program. And it's designed for folks who are in danger of going to jail because they can't pay child support. This gives you, the city will automatically assign you employment. That half your check goes to your child support, but half your check goes to also, but we're going to use that same program for people coming out of prison. And we're going to do urban farms. We're going to do courier services. We're going to do building facility maintenance. We're going to create social entrepreneurial opportunities to employ folks and offer them access to ownership. Because ownership of employment is the only way to stay out of prison. It's not counting on somebody to give you a job. You got to create a job so that you can employ other people.
What about unemployment with those that don't have a career background? Your criminal
How do you mean?
background? Like, because you're giving jobs to those who are coming out of that system. So what are you going to do with those who are just unemployed just to be unemployed?
There's no reason why they should be unemployed. I think if we can find work for folks who are in prison, we can find work for homeless people, we can find work for students, and we can find work for people who are chronically unemployed. But I submit that the people who are chronically unemployed because of something in their background. They're just not unemployed. They can't find work because they're being denied for some reason, either a mental health reason or they don't have an address. And now they do credit checks. If you apply for a job, they do a credit check. So if your credit score isn't high enough, or if you owe some money, you understand what I'm saying? So it's not just cut and dry where a person's unemployed just because.
Yeah.
Right? There's usually some mitigating circumstances that have led to that condition. And if they're chronically unemployed, as I said, I believe it's because there's something in their background.
What's your opinion on like social welfare programs and like how they're used by people? So like instead of finding employment, they go and abuse the system. What do you think about
The
that?
problem I have with social federal programs is to qualify for them, the black man can't be in home anymore. You have to be a single parent. And most of those programs are designed for families where the black man isn't there. Well, forget the black man, the man isn't in the home. So I'm not in support of any program that continues the codifying of the removal of black men from the homes. Now, I think that there should be a city subsidized service. I think that there should be city subsidized housing. And I think there should be city subsidized health care. There should be city subsidized child care as well, as a fix. That makes good sense. Anybody else? Go ahead.
You talked about gun control earlier.
Absolutely.
Come back to that. What do you think, you know, you talked about the NRA paying people to support them and what they think, you know, what do you think should happen and what do you think is gonna happen in result of, you know, the school shootings in Florida?
So, you know, before we used safety belts, right, there were a lot of car fatalities, lots of them. Once we started using safety belts, that slowed down the car deaths, right? Now, what brought in the use of safety belts was regulation. People realizing that we just had to have some kind of regulation from state to state in the city, right? We have to begin to look at gun control the same way, right? If we're giving folks access to guns who are not militarily trained, but they are a military grade gun, I think that there's something wrong with that. I think the only people who should have access to those type of guns are the ones who have been in the military. Do I believe that folks should have something to protect their homes? Absolutely, absolutely. Do I believe that we should have access to AR-15s and AK-47s? Absolutely not. There's no reason, none whatsoever. And I'll stand firm on that. That's one of the things that I care enough about your lives that I don't think a civilian should have access to an automatic weapon.
So, you know, I think it'll probably take just as long as we've had guns to take them away, just for the fact that, you know, as soon as you bring up, like, when Obama became president and everyone went out and bought guns because they thought he was gonna take them away, you know, if you really start threatening, taking away, you know, the tradition and what these people have, you know, like, people have businesses and their livelihoods based around selling of guns, and if you say you're gonna take away this, you know, don't you think there's gonna be a backlash against the government?
Is there? But what happened though, right? How did that was a top-down approach, right? Last week, we had high school kids talking about organizing to shame politicians for taking that money. So what's gonna happen? Somebody's gonna have to, because that's grassroots, that's bottom up. When it's top down, people get scared. Oh, they're gonna take it. But when it's bottoms up, it's people saying, man, we don't need these. If you care about my life as a kid, stop supporting guns. You understand what I'm saying? So it's a different thing right now. Whereas I think Obama had to deal with the fact that there were a lot of lobbying groups and special interest groups who were heavily invested in the NRA. But right now, it looks like kids are invested in their lives. And I told you, you organize people or you organize money. I'm betting on people. I'm betting on you guys organizing yourselves and putting together a protest that says you're going to put your lives first, and any politician that is taking NRA money is not worth your vote. And I think if enough of y'all do that, then you'll see a change. All right? But I think until y'all do it, it's not going to happen. Because we can't do it.
How long do you plan on keeping your political career?
As long as my wife allows me to. I didn't start off a politician, right? This is not something that I was a little kid and I said I want to grow up and be a politician, right? After I helped move the Fair Chance Hiring Ordinance, who's heard about that? Fair Chance Hiring Ordinance? Anybody know about that? Anybody know about ban the box? All right, so what that means, on an application, you have to put whether you've been to prison or not, right? And then they do a background check. Well, I was part of the group that helped take that box off the application. And now they can't do a background check until they offer you a job. So that's how I got started in politics, all right? Then we have to take that to the state ledge and protect it. So to answer your question, as long as poor people do not have control of democracy, I'll be in politics. When democracy is in the hands of poor people, I'm done.
You have a question?
Oh, so I just want to kind of follow all that up and hear from you on this. I mean, you're actually kind of embarking on your own personal journey of restoration right now. I think the district that you're looking to represent is actually where the harm was committed, right?
Absolutely.
And so, coming full circle, or at least you're about to turn that corner and come full circle now, once you get your seat, how important is that, not only for you, but for the community and for people looking to kind of do what you're doing in the future, for them to come back to the community where the harm was committed and say, hey, look, I want to be your voice, I want to fix the wrong that I did, and I want to lead this charge and make a difference. Like, how important is that to you and the community?
I think that's you have nailed it on the head on why we even ran in the first place. It's about restoration of our communities. It's about restoring our voice. It's about restoring families. It's about us being able to be participants in this thing that they've been calling a participatory democracy, but we ain't never been able to participate in it because they have never sought our vote. They have never gone out to deep East Austin and stood at your doorway. You know, one of the first things that we did is we took a list of unregistered voters. We got a list of all the unregistered voters, and we sent out cards to them and asked them to vote, right? My political consultants, they told me, why are you talking to them? They don't vote. Well, our campaign doesn't have the luxury to not go to those places where folks have been marginalized, criminalized, and penalized, and activate them and energize them to be participants in this thing that they call participatory democracy, right? And so the restoration happens personally, but it also happens with the community. Because one of the biggest things that my wife and I talk about is stigma and shame. There's a stigma and shame in the community of folks that have been to prison. If you'll notice, none of the Black power structure have embraced our story. None of the traditional power structures have embraced our story, right? Because there's the stigma and shame of somebody having killed somebody being part of the public conversation. And so that's where the restoration has to happen, right. Is that we have to begin to accept these folks home. They're coming home,
Oh, yeah.
eventually, right? And not only are we coming home, but we're fathers, we're sons, we're brothers, we're cousins, we're mothers, right? And the highest rate of population in prison is what? Black women. That is the fastest growing rate of prison population. Black women, not just women, but black women. So you've removed the black man, now you're removing the black woman. Who's left? Who's left? That's why I'm running. Is so we can stop looking at the prison system as a savior. We can look at the prison system for what it is. And it's not an answer. The prison system is us not wanting to deal with people, not wanting to deal with that harm, not wanting to deal with somebody that has a chemical imbalance in their brain, so we lock them up in an institution. All of the people who have been killed by cops who had a mental health condition didn't have to die, right? But somebody called the cops. Why couldn't they have called on Nicole? Or in the laundry? right? Why couldn't they have called somebody within the neighborhood that knew that person, that could deal with that person until they got some help? But we dial 911, 911 shows up and they kill the person. Right? So what we're talking about is community safety councils. We're talking about people who are formerly cops, formerly military, being a first line of de-escalation. I should be able to call somebody in my neighborhood first before I call the cops. But that means I gotta know my neighbor. And he has to know me. Right? Before somebody calls a person because he's having a mental health institution, a situation, they call my wife. They say, hey, Nicole, I don't know what's happening, I think after meds, what can I do? She comes out there, she handles it, right? People don't die. Is that a bad thing? That just means we're looking at public safety through the lens of public health. And not through the lens of cops are the answer. Let cops do what they do. You know what I'm saying? But don't come into our neighborhoods, you know what I mean?